When you think of America's most prolific serial killers, who comes to mind? Ted Bundy, maybe? John Wayne Gacy? Well, what if I told you the man who holds that horrifying title is someone most people have never even heard of? His name was Samuel Little, and the scale of what he did, it's almost beyond belief. 93. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many murders Samuel Little confessed to. That's more than Bundy and Gacy combined. A number so huge it just forces you to ask one simple, terrifying question. How on earth does one man kill that many people over that many years without anyone ever connecting the dots? To even begin to understand that, we have to go back to where and when his horrific spree began. We're talking about a 35-year killing spree, stretching from 1970 all the way to 2005. And his hunting ground? It was the entire country. He was active in at least 19 different states. For decades, he was a ghost, just drifting from city to city, leaving behind a trail of victims that no one even knew were connected. So, where did a monster like this come from? Well, long before the murders, Little was already a career criminal. And his early life, it's like a roadmap for how a predator is made, and how the very system designed to stop people like him can completely miss the signs. It all started small back in the 1950s. Theft, assaults, the usual stuff. By the 60s, he was a ghost, a transient, constantly moving and racking up arrests. But with every arrest, he was learning. He was figuring out the system's weaknesses. And then, in 1970, he crossed that final line. He committed his first known murder, kicking off a pattern that would go on and on for 35 years. You see, him getting away with it for so long wasn't just luck. It was a method. It was a strategy. Samuel Little understood something absolutely crucial. If you want to be a ghost, you have to prey on people that society has already made invisible. And that was his greatest shield. His strategy was as simple as it was brutal. He went after marginalized women, sex workers, women struggling with drug addiction, because he knew their disappearances were less likely to set off major alarm bells. His method of killing, strangulation, often left very little obvious evidence, especially back in a pre-DNA world. And by constantly moving, he made sure each murder was just a single tragic case in one town, never a piece of a much larger, horrifying picture. And this was the final critical piece of his camouflage. With no obvious signs of foul play, like a gunshot or a stab wound, coroners often got it wrong. The deaths were ruled as drug overdoses, accidents, or from undetermined causes. So Samuel Little wasn't just hiding from the police, he was being actively hidden by the limitations of the very system meant to find him. For decades, he was untouchable, a ghost. But by the 2010s, things had changed. Technology, specifically DNA, was about to do what all those years of police work just couldn't. Samuel Little's long, bloody run was finally coming to an end. After all that time, after all those murders, it all came crashing down because of a minor drug charge in 2012. He got sent to California on a warrant, and they took a routine DNA sample. That sample was the key. It lit up the database, a perfect match to cold case evidence from 3 unsolved murders in LA from the 80s. In 2014, he was convicted and sentenced to life. The ghost was finally caught. But you know what? The story doesn't even end there. Once he was behind bars, the man who denied everything for so long, well, he decided to talk. And what he had to say was worse than anyone could have possibly imagined. In prison, Little just started talking. And talking. He confessed to one murder, then another, and another, until he had claimed 93 victims. 93. At first, investigators couldn't believe it. The number was just unheard of. But as they started checking his stories against old cold cases, the chilling details lined up. Today, the FBI has confirmed he's responsible for at least 60 of those murders, making him, without a doubt, the deadliest serial killer in American history. His memory was just unreal, photographic. It was unnerving. Decades after he killed someone, he could recall the smallest details, what they were wearing, the song playing on the car radio, the exact spot where he left their body. It was this almost inhuman level of detail that made his confessions both so credible and so utterly horrifying. And then, in one of the most bizarre and haunting twists you'll ever hear, Little started to draw. Turns out, he was a pretty talented artist. From memory, he sketched these incredibly vivid portraits of his victims. The FBI released the drawings to the public, a final, desperate attempt to give these women back their names. So, when all is said and done, what do we take away from a story this dark? The case of Samuel Little is so much more than just the story of one evil man. It is a profound and, frankly, tragic lesson about the systems that are supposed to protect every single one of us. This whole story is really a dual tragedy. On one side, you have the pure, depraved evil of a predator who hunted people for decades. But on the other, you have these massive institutional blind spots, fragmented police departments that didn't talk to each other, and a societal indifference that meant the deaths of these women just weren't a priority. He got away with it because of who he killed. This is the textbook definition of a systemic failure. See, Samuel Little didn't just find the cracks in the system, he lived in them. Before national DNA databases, before real interagency task forces, every police department was basically its own island, and that lack of communication created the perfect hunting ground for a killer who never stayed put. And that leaves us with this one final, really unsettling thought. Samuel Little was caught. We know his secrets now. But his case is this terrifying reminder to ask ourselves, how many other stories just like this are still out there, buried in cold case files, simply because we, as a society, never looked hard enough at who was missing?